I've been humbled and broken to my core. I hate myself right now.
But that's what he said in court. Inside prison, he's been doing something completely different. Plotting, scheming, imagining the revenge he was going to unleash on the one woman who destroyed everything.
Everybody's getting their laughs on, but we'll get the last laugh.
That confidence, that certainty, that fantasy of domination. It was all built on one catastrophic miscalculation. Cassie just filed one piece of paperwork, one declaration, and she evaporated his entire revenge plot overnight. She's gone, and there's absolutely nothing he can do about it from a prison cell. That's what power looks like when it abandons you. This is what happens when a man loses absolute control. Welcome back to another breakdown that's going to make your jaw hit the floor. If you're not subscribed, hit that button right now, because this story is evolving every single week, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what's happening inside Diddy's mind right now and why Cassie's strategic genius has him absolutely spiraling. For years, Sean Combs operated under one fundamental belief. He controlled the narrative. He decided who was in and who was out. He determined what people could say, where they could go, who they could see. He was the center of gravity, the sun in his own solar system. Everything orbited around him and nothing moved without his permission. That system worked perfectly until it didn't. Most people know the surface level story. Cassie and Diddy dated, it ended. But that's the sanitized version. The reality is far more disturbing. Listen to that detail. Puffy, not Diddy. That's the real name people use when they're talking about the man behind closed doors. The version without the persona. And that moment, that audition, that look, that's the infrastructure of how his control system actually worked. Diddy didn't just date Cassie, he owned her. He controlled what she wore. He controlled who she talked to. He controlled what she said in interviews. He controlled her access to substances. He controlled her body. He controlled her freedom of movement. Let that sink in. Cassie showed up while visibly pregnant, while her body was literally creating new life, while she was vulnerable in every possible way, and she looked directly at the man who spent years systematically destroying her and told the truth under oath. That single act of testimony cracked the entire foundation of Diddy's power structure. For decades, Diddy's network kept him insulated. Lawyers, fixers, enablers, intimidators, an entire ecosystem designed to make problems disappear. Hotel chains didn't call the police when they found surveillance footage of a woman being beaten in a hallway. They called him and sold him the evidence. That's the scale of corruption we're talking about. Not petty bribery, not small favors. Institutional, systematic enablement of abuse at the highest level. But here's where the strategy shifted. Cassie didn't just testify and disappear. She filed a lawsuit. She pressed charges. She documented everything. And then, this is the part that matters, she waited. She waited for the trial. She waited for the verdict. She waited for the sentencing. She waited for him to get locked away. And then, on May 1st, she filed a court declaration that would become the catalyst for his psychological breakdown. Read that again. Not, I'm taking a break. Not, I'm on vacation. Not, I might leave temporarily. I do not intend to move back. That's permanent. That's strategic. That's a woman who got legal advice from people who understood exactly what Diddy was planning, and she removed herself from the board entirely. This is where you need to understand Diddy's psychology, and I mean really understand it. He's in a federal prison cell in New Jersey. Fort Dix, early morning wake-up calls, restricted phone privileges, monitored emails, separated bathrooms with only curtains for privacy, complete loss of autonomy, complete loss of control. For a man whose entire identity is built around control, prison isn't just punishment, it's existential annihilation. So what does he do? The same thing every narcissist does when they hit rock bottom. He fantasizes about revenge. That's not speculation. That's the infrastructure of how he's operated his entire adult life. When someone stepped out of line, when someone threatened his control, he had a playbook. Harassment, intimidation, isolation, systematic psychological destruction. He fully believed, and this is crucial, he fully believed that once he got out on appeal, even with limited freedom, even with supervision, even from a diminished position, he could still rebuild his network. He could still get to Cassie. He could still make her suffer. He was building that fantasy cell by cell.
Everybody's getting their laughs on, but we'll get the last laugh.
Listen to the tone there. That's not a broken man. That's a man who still thinks he's going to win. That's a man who's convinced his empire will return. That's a man building a revenge narrative in his head every single day. But Cassie wasn't playing the same game. While Diddy was rotting in a cell planning comebacks, Cassie was doing something far more strategic. She was building a new life on a different continent. The settlement negotiation was $30 million total. $20 million directly from Diddy for the abuse. $10 million from the hotel for the cover-up and the footage. But here's what matters. That money wasn't just compensation. It was liberation currency. With $30 million, Cassie could hire the best immigration lawyers, the best security consultants, the best financial advisors. She could set up accounts in multiple countries. She could establish residency abroad. She could create a life that Diddy's remaining network, already fractured and broke, couldn't possibly reach. That's not running. That's winning. That's strategic relocation with expert counsel and generational wealth. And most importantly, and this is what drives Diddy absolutely insane, she's beyond his reach. Now, Diddy's fantasy of revenge relies relies on one foundational assumption, that his network still exists, that he still has people who will do his bidding, that loyalty is unshakable, that money and access still mean something. That assumption is dead. Let that sink in. The men who were allegedly part of his inner circle, who participated in his crimes, who benefited from his wealth and power, they can't even afford gas to get to court. Stevie J and Young Miami aren't making phone calls to secure Diddy's release. They're going on podcasts and crying about how the industry abandoned them. They're crying about how nobody returns their calls. They're crying about how they tied their entire identity to a man now serving federal time. That's what proximity to power looks like when the power evaporates. Diddy can't even fund an international search for Cassie. His remaining loyalists are borrowing money for gas. The idea that he has some network of private investigators tracking her down internationally, it's laughable. It's the fantasy of a man completely detached from reality. But here's what makes this psychologically devastating for Diddy. Cassie doesn't just represent an ex-lover who moved on. She represents the one person who dismantled his entire empire. She's not just a victim who escaped. She's the architect of his downfall. She's the woman who broke the silence. She's the one who turned the system against him. And now she's gone, completely out of reach, probably in a beautiful home thousands of miles away, raising children, loving a husband who actually protects her, building a future while Diddy stares at prison walls. That's the distinction that matters. Diddy doesn't miss Cassie. He misses owning Cassie. He misses the control. He misses the power dynamic. He misses the ability to dictate her reality. And that's exactly what she took from him. There's one more element to this that amplifies Diddy's psychological torture. When Cassie started moving toward Alex Fine, there were rumors, and I believe them, that Alex did something nobody else in the industry had done for years. He stepped directly to Diddy, read between those lines. That's not just standing up for a woman. That's directly challenging Diddy's authority. That's refusing to accept his hierarchy. That's a man saying, your power ends here, and Alex won. That's the cruelest irony in all of this. Diddy is locked in a cell. He can't see his kids without supervision. He can't have unsupervised phone calls. He can't access the internet freely. He can't eat what he wants. He can't sleep when he wants. He can't control anything. Cassie and Alex are presumably together, building the exact domestic life Diddy spent decades sabotaging for other people. Let's talk about what Diddy's actual prison experience looks like, because it gives context to why he's spiraling over Cassie. 50 months. That's over 4 years, originally, but prison time gets complicated.
Defendants get good time on their sentences, and so sometimes sentences just get reduced for general good credit, essentially. But this is more specific. He, as part of this whole case, he said during the sentencing, that he let sort of drugs and alcohol and excess get in the way of his life. And so he sort of established with like the ketamine and the MDMA that drugs were at least part of what was going on here. And so when he got to Fort Dix, the prison he's in New Jersey, the federal prison he's in, he entered into what's called RDAP, a residential drug abuse program. It's offered to many defendants in situations like this. And if you complete that program, you can get up to a year taken off your sentence.
So theoretically, Diddy could be out by January 2028, approximately 18 months remaining at this point. But here's where prison psychology gets interesting. Time slows down when you're locked up. Every single day feels like a week. Every week feels like a month. And when your mind is occupied with fantasies of revenge, with plots you can't execute, with plans that crumble the moment you file paperwork, time becomes a psychological weapon.
So there was an incident that we first learned about 2 weeks ago during Diddy's sentencing hearing, and he said, I was sleeping in my bed in the prison. It's a federal detention facility in Brooklyn called MDC Brooklyn, and there are federal inmates who are in many cases waiting for their trial as well. And Diddy claimed that somebody held a knife to his throat. He woke up and this guy basically had him, and he had the knife, and Diddy was at this person's mercy. Now, whether that incident happened exactly as described or not, it's being used as part of his legal defense. It shows he's vulnerable. It shows he's a target. It shows that even in prison, even with his name and whatever remaining connections he has, he's not safe.
I think he got into an incident that actually landed him in solitary confinement, which is obviously the most restrictive, the most harsh form of imprisonment that we have in our society. And then right after that, it comes out that his sentence has been reduced and reduced again.
That's the cycle. He acts out. He gets punished. He gets time back for good behavior. He acts out again. The pattern repeats. But through all of it, he's fantasizing about Cassie. He's scheming about what he'll do when he gets out. He's building revenge narratives in his head, and she's just gone. May 1st. That's the date that changed everything. When Cassie's declaration was filed, I reside outside of the United States. I do not intend to move back. It wasn't just a legal filing. It was a prison sentence for his revenge fantasy. Think about that sequence. Trial happens. She testifies while pregnant. Verdict comes down. She wins her settlement. She secures her legal victory. And then, only then, she leaves. That's not impulsive. That's not emotional. That's calculated. That's a woman who worked with lawyers and strategists and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to win. We're going to collect. And then we're going to disappear. Diddy is facing the reality that his revenge plot isn't a fantasy anymore. It's impossible. It's not even a long shot or a difficult challenge. It's structurally impossible. He's been surrounded by yes men his entire life. Everyone has bent to his will. Everyone has accepted his authority. Everyone has backed down when he exerted power. Cassie didn't bend. She broke free. And she took the power to stop him with her. Here's what's really happening inside Diddy's mind right now. He's lying on a prison bunk. He's staring at the ceiling. His mind is cycling through the same thought pattern over and over. She's supposed to still be here. She's supposed to be within reach. When I get out, I'm supposed to have access to her. That's how this is supposed to go. That's how I make things work. But she's not there. She's not within reach. And she will never be within reach again. Not from his position of diminished power, not from a parole situation with restrictions, not from any scenario where he emerges from prison. That's not just a change in circumstances. That's the complete annihilation of his worldview. For decades, he operated under one rule. He wins. Everyone else loses. He controls the narrative. He dictates the outcome. He's the one who decides who rises and who falls. Cassie rewrote the entire system, and he can't do anything about it. Now we're getting to the reports of how he's actually behaving in prison right now, and it's consistent with a man losing his grip on reality, according to people close to the situation. And yes, we should take this with a grain of salt because who actually knows what's really being said? Diddy is furious, not remorseful, not reflective, not spending his time processing the harm he caused. Furious. But that's the delusion. His name doesn't carry weight anymore. His reputation is obliterated. His business empire is gone. The industry connections have gone silent. The people who used to return his calls within 30 seconds now act like they never knew him. Think about that. Diddy Combs, Sean Combs, the man who shaped hip-hop, the man who launched careers, the man who controlled access to the industry for decades. When he gets out, he'll have supervised release. He'll have restrictions. He'll have a federal monitor. And most importantly, he'll have nobody. No comeback, no empire rebuild, no revenge, no Cassie. The question everyone wants answered, where is Cassie now? And the honest answer is, it doesn't matter. More importantly, it's actually protective that we don't know. That's the ethical line. We celebrate her escape without facilitating her potential pursuit. We acknowledge her victory without becoming part of the surveillance apparatus, because that's what Diddy did for years. He surveilled, he tracked, he monitored, he collected information on people he wanted to control. Cassie's withdrawal from public location data is her reclaiming that autonomy. She gets to disappear. She gets to choose her privacy. She gets to build a life that's not available for consumption or surveillance or tracking. That's freedom. Real freedom. Not the kind that's theoretical or conditional. Not the kind that comes with a monitoring device or supervised release. Real, actual freedom to wake up and not be afraid. And here's where the psychology gets really dark. Because Diddy's obsession with control, his need to dominate, his systematic abuse of women, it didn't come from nowhere. There's been speculation about his personal insecurities. And I'm not going to body shame anyone because that's not the point here. But there's a pattern that's impossible to ignore. Think about it. A man who felt small, who felt inadequate, who couldn't process his own insecurities. So instead of going to therapy, instead of having an honest conversation with himself, he spent decades making everyone else feel small. He drugged women. He trafficked them. He controlled them. He filmed them without consent. He made them perform while he watched. He built an entire power structure designed to prove to himself that he was bigger than he actually was. He built an empire of abuse to compensate for a personal inadequacy. And then one woman, the woman he thought he had completely destroyed, walked out with $30 million, a clear conscience, and a life beyond his reach. That's poetic justice on a scale most people can't even comprehend. Now there are still people in the industry who support Diddy, who defend him, who attend his court hearings looking sad and supportive, who claim he's being persecuted. These are people who watch the hotel hallway footage of a woman being beaten, a woman in a towel being dragged down a hallway, and they still think Diddy deserves a second chance. At what point does the cognitive dissonance become unbearable? At what point do you look at the evidence and think, maybe I should find a different circle to run in? At what point do you realize that your proximity to power doesn't protect you? It just makes you the next potential victim? The loyalists are discovering that in real time. They showed up for him. They claimed they believed him. And in return, they got abandoned by the industry and can't even afford parking at the courthouse. There's one more layer to this that matters for Diddy's current mental state. His appeal, he's appealing his sentence. He's saying the judge relied on allegations he wasn't convicted of. He's trying to reduce his time. And on paper, there might be legitimate legal arguments there.
Because he was really only convicted of two things, right? 2 counts of engaging in prostitution that crossed state lines, engaging in transportation for the purposes of prostitution, meaning that they found that prostitutes were driven across state lines for these freak-offs. The main point of the appeal is that the defense team says that the judge, in sentencing him to 50 months, which is a high sentence for those two charges, that sentencing him to those 50 months, the judge relied on these claims that these workers were forced, coerced, and really did all these things against their will. And that really wasn't what he was found guilty of.
Okay, so legally there might be a technical basis, but here's the reality. Even if he wins the appeal, even if he gets his sentence reduced, even if he gets out in 18 months instead of 48 months, what then? That's it. The appeal isn't about freedom. It's about story control. It's about creating a public narrative that he's being persecuted. It's about building an underdog image. It's about trying to manipulate public perception into believing he's a victim. But that narrative only works if Cassie is still available to be victimized. It only works if he has a network still standing behind him. It only works if he has some pathway to power restoration. He has none of those things. So where does this leave us? Diddy is in a federal prison cell. He's lost his empire. He's lost his reputation. He's lost his access. He's lost his network. He's lost his freedom. And most psychologically devastating of all, he's lost his power over the one woman who finally broke his hold on her life. She's out there, thousands of miles away, with a husband who protected her, with children who don't know him, with money he can never touch, with a life he can never sabotage. He's losing it in prison because he has to face a reality he's never had to face. Absolute powerlessness. Not in the abstract sense, not in a theoretical way, but complete, total, unavoidable powerlessness against the one person who matters most to him. Not because he loves her, but because she represents his total failure to control his world. That's the ending. That's the resolution. Not in court, not in appeals, not in revenge fantasies or prison schemes. In the complete, devastating realization that he lost. He lost to the woman he thought he owned. He lost to the system he thought he could manipulate. Like, he lost to reality itself, and he's going to spend the next several years staring at concrete walls, processing that loss. She won. He lost, and there's nothing he can do about it from a prison cell.